20 minutes before 8 on this Friday morning, yesterday's announcement of the groundbreaking organ transplant has opened a world of possibilities in medical research. Wits University doctors performed the first ever operation where a mother living with HIV donated her liver to her HIV negative baby. Now, the child was born with end-stage liver failure and had actually no chance of survival. According to the Organ Donor Foundation, approximately 4,300 adults and children are on the waiting list for an organ transplant. To tell us more about this historic milestone is Professor Jean Botha. He's one of the surgeons who performed this amazing procedure. Good to have you, Doc. Thanks for coming in.
That's a pleasure. Good to be here.
So this was, I imagine, or was it, a moral dilemma? You have a mother who is HIV positive. You have a baby whose life is literally hanging on the line, and the chances of the survival is not really there. But there's this option of saving her by taking a part of the liver from the mother who's HIV positive and putting it into a baby, with the chances of the baby becoming HIV positive. How did you feel making this decision?
So we agonized over the decision. There are lots of ethical issues, and you touched on one of them. Was without a transplant, the child was certain to die.
Yeah.
Needed one, had been on our waiting list for some time, and wasn't getting access to an organ. So we were faced with the dilemma of, do we save the child's life but infect the child with HIV, possibly by performing this transplant? That was the easier part of the ethical dilemma, because I think everybody who's seen the story now would say, obviously, I'd take life over living with HIV.
Yeah.
We have the largest antiretroviral program in the world by far, and so we have lots of people living with HIV, living long, normal, healthy lives with it. So we know about that. The thing that we agonized about was this child couldn't make this decision for itself.
Yeah.
We were making the decision for the child, and we were putting this child, we were going to save its life, but then subjecting it to a world where, and particularly our world, where HIV has a stigma attached to it. And so that was the part that we struggled with, making a decision for somebody that couldn't participate in that decision-making process.
Yeah.
We finally reverted back to ultimately, we had to save this child's life, and that was the easy part then. So we ranged from, I did certainly, from being petrified about making this decision to where we are now is a sense of elation that we've actually accomplished this. And
a positive story coming out of all of it. So the mother, now obviously this was the mother's idea?
Well, we do offer it. So living donor liver transplantation was started our program in 2013, and this was an attempt on our part to address the organ shortage. We needed organs, and we now are forced to turn to living donors. It's not anyone's first choice to put a normal, healthy human being at risk to donate part of their liver so that they can save somebody else's life. But we have to do that because we have a critical shortage, and people will die without waiting. So we do living donor liver transplant. So we offered it to the mom, and then in the workup process, and she volunteered that she was HIV positive, and at that time that just automatically excluded her. We weren't considering that. It wasn't standard practice anywhere else in the world. It hasn't been. So we did not consider her as a potential donor, until the child started getting sicker and sicker, and life-threatening complications of the liver disease, and the mom kept pushing us. And ultimately asked the question, I mean, I have rights. Why are you excluding me? Why does being HIV positive mean I can't save my child's life? And so we were pushed by her, and ultimately forced us to think about this and forced us to address the ethical issues around this. And ultimately we did.
Is there legislation in place? I mean, is it an unwritten rule, or is it an actual rule that if you are HIV positive, you cannot be an organ donor? We know that. I mean, organ donors, blood donors, all of those things, you are excluded from that.
You are. In South Africa, there's no law. However, in the United States, it was law. Before 2013, you were banned from using HIV-positive organs. And work done in Cape Town, addressing the same organ shortages for kidney failure patients who had HIV but had no access to dialysis and no access to organs. They started transplanting HIV-positive deceased organs into HIV-positive recipients, and the results were very good. This prompted the United States to look at this. This was such good research that they actually changed the law, something called the HOPE Act.
Yeah.
And the HOPE Act came into law in 2013. And this then took away that ban from using HIV-positive organs. So HIV-positive organs can be used now. In South Africa, that was never actually a law, though.
Yeah,
but
so it was more
practice.
of a moral.
Yeah, it was
a moral feeling, which by right, the mother has a say. This is my baby, and I am choosing life over death for her.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it's quite an incredible story. But how is this going to change the way things are done now? Because let's just put viewers in perspective now. The baby, it's now more than a year since the operation is done, and he or she is turning 2.
We'd prefer not to.
Yeah, exactly.
That.
He or she, so we leave it at that, is about to turn over 2, heading to 3 years old.
Yeah.
No signs of HIV, is absolutely negative.
Well, that's the dilemma. We'd like to say it's equivocal at this stage, because diagnosing HIV in a child is already very difficult. So this child was exposed to HIV certainly around the time of its birth, and got prophylaxis at that point, and didn't acquire the disease. Now it was exposed again at the time of transplant. But we had a very controlled situation. We could make sure that the mom's viral load was undetected, her CD4 count was high, she was healthy and was completely virally suppressed. And then transplanting the organ into the child, we could prophylax the child. We could give the child antiretroviral therapy, which we've obviously maintained. What's come out of the woodwork with all of this is the test we weren't expecting. We actually took the position that the child was going to become HIV positive. That was what we knew from the literature of HIV positive accidental transplantation, actually, that has occurred. So we assumed that was going to be the case. The child became positive at 6 weeks, just with an antibody test, the routine test that we all go and get to make a diagnosis. And that then waned over time. That test has almost disappeared and become negative. Also, we've been unable to detect virus in the child. If we look for very sensitive testing, trying to detect particles of the virus, we can't find it.
Yeah. A quick 2 questions for
you.
How is the mother doing?
Mother's doing brilliantly.
She's doing well.
Resumed her normal life. She's back at work.
How much of her liver did she donate?
About 25%.
And now that grows back. Many people don't know this.
Yeah, no, the liver regenerates. It's one of the few organs in our body that does regenerate. And it's brilliant. Within about 6 to 8 weeks, this organ has regenerated to almost the entire number of cells it started off with before the surgery.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that a lot more people would want to do this kind of procedure. I mean, and willingly do it for loved ones, because you're saying that. I'm seeing some figures between 20 and 25% of children who need organ donors in South Africa will die while waiting. And that's a very sad statistic. Yeah. Do you have to be compatible, though?
Blood group only.
Blood group only.
And size. We've just got to make sure that the piece of liver that we take out is going to fit into this little body. And children need organs at varying ages, whether they're under 1-year-old, up to 5-year-old. So they'll be different sizes. And it's just a matter of a blood group compatibility and size that the organ's going to fit in.
Just finally, is this revolutionary? I mean, do you think that this is going to change and open up the scope? Or do we have to wait a little longer for particularly HIV patients to become organ donors?
I think we have to wait a little longer. This is starting the conversation as to, is this a possibility? Could this be a new reality? And we believe it will be, but I think we have to be cautious in making that statement.
First ever in the world?
First ever in the world, as far as we know.
Well done. Well done. What a great story, Professor Jean Botha, one of the surgeons who performed this procedure, and a procedure that I'm sure we'll get you in a year's time just to get an update again and just find out how the child is doing, and whether or not that virus has actually taken into the child. But as it stands right now, he or she is HIV-free. Incredible story. All right, 12 minutes before 8, let's take a break. Drugs within community.